Topic is Malcolm X. The guest is Dr. AAl-Hadid, the chairperson of Africana Studies at Tennessee State University. And of course, Doctor, before we had our break, you promised that you would give us some information relative to Malcolm outside of the nation. And of course, we'll give you an opportunity to do that now.
Yeah, the Malcolm outside of the Nation of Islam was a new man, totally transformed. He didn't continue to spout racist rhetoric. He was a person who was actually moving a lot closer to Martin Luther King. As a matter of fact, in February of 1965, just before his assassination, he'd actually gone to Selma, Alabama, in order to form a coalition of conscience with Martin Luther King. Unfortunately, at the time, Dr. King was in jail, but he did take counsel with his wife, Coretta Scott King, Andrew Young, Bernard Lafayette, as well as John Lewis. And he was trying to say that he made some mistakes when he was inside of the Nation of Islam, and he understood that Martin Luther King's strategy of freedom, justice, and equality was the best way for our people to go. So he wanted to take the civil rights struggle from the level of civil rights to the level of human rights. And rather than trying to lodge our case with the United States Supreme Court, he wanted to make an argument for human rights before the United Nations and the World Court, because he actually saw, you know, today, for example, we hear people talking about genocide going on in the Sudan or other parts of the world. In 1964 and 65, Malcolm was saying that the white supremacist government of this country, the white supremacists in this country were actually committing acts of genocide against African Americans. So he was making the case for genocide and also making the case for human rights. And he was trying to get a buy-in from Dr. King in order to move in that direction. And you have to remember now, both Dr. King and Malcolm had gone outside of this country in 1964. Malcolm made the pilgrimage in April of '64, and Dr. King got the Nobel Peace Prize in December of 1964. So when both of these men came back inside of the United States in 1964, they had shifted from a race-based analysis of the problem to more or less a class analysis and also an international analysis. You remember Dr. King was talking about voting rights. He was also talking about, he started to move against the war in Vietnam. And Malcolm had already been there some years early, even when he was in the Nation of Islam. So they both started to deal more with human rights issues. They both started to deal with international issues, being opposed to the war in Vietnam, being opposed to the apartheid government in South Africa. And so it looked as though the two men were starting to come together. As a matter of fact, he was assassinated on February 21st, 1965, which was on a Sunday at 3 o'clock. That following Tuesday, he was supposed to meet with Martin Luther King at the home of Sidney Poitier. They were supposed to come together and have a discussion about how Malcolm could get on board with the civil rights movement and take it to the next level. Because there's no doubt that Malcolm completely dominated the ghettos of the North, and also some of the ghettos on the West Coast, like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and so forth. King completely dominated the southern region. So the leaders, these two leaders, one being the champion of the blacks in the inner cities of the North, and the other one being the champion of the working class in the South, as well as the peasants, the sharecroppers in the South, in Alabama, and Mississippi, and Arkansas. So had those two men come together in 1965, the kind of problems that we're looking at now would probably not be in existence, because those two men, I think, working in tandem, working together, would have been the type of unity that we needed on the international front as well as the local scene.
You know, you spoke earlier about Dr. King and Malcolm, and I think that at one time you indicated that Malcolm and King sort of play the same role in a real sense, and they were both disliked intensely by J. Edgar Hoover. Touch upon that. I mean, what was Malcolm's relationship with Mr. Hoover, and why? And I think that there's even some suggestion that the government might have had something to do with his assassination, even though the government itself did not assassinate him. He was, from what I understand, he was assassinated by members of the Nation of Islam's organization. But speak to that.
Yeah, that was a myth, I think, and I would want to call it a myth that was sort of operating inside of the intelligence community in this country at that time. And much of it had to do with the fact that we were in the Cold War, you know, the communism versus the Western so-called democracies. And so